11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Yeah, welcome everybody to our daily gun show. Come to you live every weeknight at midnight Eastern, and we talk about guns, for as much time as we can. We'd like to do it overnight, so we see a scroll down at the bottom of the screen there. It's to our Patreons, people that subscribe to our projects. Consider subscribing to our projects. The more people we got on board, better potential we have to go all night long with the daily gun show. We do some other things. We put them on the internet, and I guess I'm taking forever because I haven't opened up my screen here. So we're going to eventually get everything situated on the monitors the way it's supposed to be. And there you go. So we're going to eventually get everything situated. Puppy underneath of there, and now we're cooking with gas. So we're taking a look at the screen here at the video that we're watching. Yes, you're watching the same video that you're watching through the screen that you're watching it on. It's possible to do that. Not a lot of people bother with it, but you'll see the description of this video has lots and lots of interesting things in it. However, it's pretty boring to look at because YouTube doesn't let us put much formatting in there. So let's head over to our Substack, which I think has probably the best visual version of what we're talking about here. So our Substack is essentially a blog over here on the Substack platform. And that's what we'll take a look at today as we're talking about what went on this week in Second Amendment. All right, so thanks to Roy for joining us live. If you're out there and you want to be part of the show, use the comments and they'll show up over here on the screen. That's why we leave a quarter to a third of our screen over here for the people that are showing up live. If you're listening to this in the future, you can still leave comments. Feel free to do so. We encourage you to. That way we know what's happening out there. All right, so this is episode 1490. We may just be 10 episodes away from episode 1500. This is season 8 of our daily gun show, and let's dig into it. The bullet points for the beginning of the week. I'm titling the show Learning How to Win 2A. And that's not quite, but almost a direct quote from Tony Simon in his interview at Gun Freedom Radio this week. But that's something that we need to master, right? That's a great insight. And I'm not sure he was talking about something else, but I'm applying it to our experience as gun owners and Second Amendment aware folks. We're going to see cycles. We're going to see trends. We're going to see people come and go. We're going to see attacks. We're going to see resistance, and we're going to see cycles of that over and over. Sometimes the topic changes, sometimes it doesn't, but you get more insight the longer you go. And I think once you've been in the fight for a while, you know what I'm talking about. You'll know why I'm focusing on that. Learning how to win 2A is definitely a challenge. So thanks to Tony for that. And you can hear the rest of that interview on Gun Freedom Radio. Tony's coming out to Arizona for our 2A rally, our 10th annual Second Amendment rally next weekend, next Saturday, not tomorrow, but next Saturday, the 18th of February. And Tony will be coming out. He's raising money to do that. $5 a slot gets you a chance to grab an SB tactical brace. And all those $5 will add up and help Tony get out here to Arizona. So check out diversityshoot.com. I'll put a link in the description here. Or should I put a link into the text chat here. Type in Diversity Shoot. You get this. You get that. I probably should have taken a highlight of that, but we can grab that URL, put it here. I usually like to try to find a I'll just go back one and grab the words from here. Maybe. There we go. Copy that and put that there with the equal sign. And now it's a little easier to see or grab. Anyhow, check out Diversity Shoot over on the right. You'll find a link to the PayPal. It's probably the easiest way to go. Thanks for helping out, Cody. All right, getting into the bullet points this week. This was actually a tough week to keep track. Lots of little stuff going on. It's the time of year when the politicians are putting out their yearly projects, their yearly campaigns. So lots of stuff coming up that's got a 1%, 2% chance of passing. And if something's got a 1% chance of passing, you've got a 100% chance of saying how bad it is and having people listen to you, especially if they don't stick around year after year, because then all they do is hear all these things that are going to happen, and we're going to hear about them. All right, so the good stuff that's going on was, well, it's hard to say. I don't know all of it, so I can't say it was more or less. I found more good stuff this week, but I wasn't looking. I was just listening. Wasn't digging it out. I was just finding what was offered. Let's put it that way. And in my experience, it was more good stuff this week. So the first thing is from here in Arizona, we have a House Bill 2332, and that would require firearms training, at least an hour of firearms training for all grades 6 through 12 in all the different kind of schools, public, charter, and private schools. And that would allow awareness, right? Education, just like a hot stove or electricity, or, don't put heavy things on the edge of a cabinet. Just some common sense kind of awareness and safety, not operation or use, just safety. And of course, that's getting a lot of resistance from Shan and Mom's Demand, because their version of gun safety is safety from the gun. They're trying to create that narrative that you're truly safe from guns by removing them from society, where another and the more traditional definition of firearm safety is safety with a firearm. Safe use, operation awareness, safe handling, and safe, I guess awareness is the best word, safe understanding of the firearm. There's a lot of craziness, just like if you look at a car chase or a car accident in a movie or TV. If they need it, it'll be an explosion. It'll be a tremendous roll down a hill or something. There'll be a huge collision and cars will go flying all over the place when they need to. Cars go flying off of bridges all the time in movies. But in reality, that little guardrail stops cars from falling off the edge of a bridge, falling off the edge of a overpass or whatever. So we know that there's a big gap between what we see happen with vehicles in movies and reality. But people don't put that same understanding or that same hesitation to what they consider possible for guns. And it's one of those things that's used against us, that unawareness. Guns being normal requires people sharing their guns and their actual gun use. And eventually we'll get back to where people understand the reality of guns. All right, so getting into Florida HB1339 is their constitutional carry. And you probably won't hear much about that. Or maybe you'll hear nothing but gossip about that. There's Chicago Mike. Good evening. Welcome. Just gonna leave it up longer than that. Let's see. Then we have states, 25 states, getting together to sue the ATF, along with I forget what FRAC stands for. It's a fairly new organization, and then some companies are all suing the ATF over the breaks. You get North Dakota with HB1339 Constitutional Carry amendments, I guess. North Dakota has constitutional carry for the residents, but not necessarily for visitors. So there's a House bill to update their constitutional carry to be just the same as all the other 24 states that have it. And then last, we don't get to talk about Puerto Rico enough. So Puerto Rico lawyers chapter of the Federalist Society had a get together and invited Stephen Hallbrook down there, and he mentioned that he'd be down there. It was 2 days ago, I guess, on Wednesday. So I thought I'd post that. It's kind of cool. Then we've got, in the same vein, John Lott speaking at the Maryland General Assembly to oppose their SB1, which I'm guessing is their, if I remember right, that's the state of Maryland's. It's new gun owners infringements. Now, there were some bad things this week. The worst thing is, of course, Feinstein's assault weapons ban, Senate Bill 25. There's different opinions on how dangerous that one is. The last one was bipartisan and got all the way through to the last hours, literally, last days, the last hours before the Senate expired, and it was still 14%. Typical gun bills are either 1 or 2% chance of happening, according to the internet sites that track that stuff with metrics. It was 14% for the assault weapons ban, that's recent, and it went all the way till very, very close to the end. If there'd have been any kind of effective media push from the other side, and we know that the mass media spends more time and effort covering negative firearm stories than they do covering presidential elections in the United States. They spend more time on negative firearm stories than they do covering war. And we just got done with a global war on terror that was longer than any other war in history, except for the 140 years of the American Indian battles, wars. So aside from those confrontations, the global war on terror just ended, and they spend more time covering negative aspects of firearms in the United States, violence with firearms by very few people, and then more than they do on the Super Bowl, which isn't as big a deal, but back in the day, people understood that the Super Bowl was the main thing that people spent, or that the mass media spent attention on. They still spend millions of dollars a minute or second or something on that advertising. All right, so then we've got a blog post from Cape Gunworks that was about the handguns you can own in Massachusetts. Pretty interesting to see. Those of us who are in states where we don't have infringements and requirements on what firearms we can possess, it can be something we don't think about enough, about what they're dealing with in these states that have lists and all kinds of barriers for a firearms manufacturer to sell in a state. Say hey to some of the other people showing up. AR Guns is out there, AR Guns 1776, keeping the community together with live conversations over on his channel. Check it out. Mentos is out there. Thanks for joining us. Chicago Mike, welcome back again. And it says Illinois has way too many lawsuits going on. It's ridiculous. Lawsuits or, like gutted out cities or some kind of skirmishes or massive wicked crime. I know it's depending on, what you want, how you want to look at any of those aspects. They do exist, but compared to name a country that we're connected to with a large international land border. And yeah, the lawsuits are annoying and the lawsuits are frustrating and they definitely cost money, but they're civil. There are opportunities to have civil discourse. Does that make sense? Like we're having discussions on this where you're infringed. People in Chicago are infringed. People in Illinois are infringed by those laws. It is frustrating, and I'm not trying to make that light of that. But just compared to violence and compared to complete stifle or complete government control, it's frustrating, but we are making waves. There was a time when it wouldn't be fathomable for Illinois to have concealed carry, to have a permit to conceal carry. Let's see. So, like I said, it's not fun, but it's better than alternatives, and we are making headway. So while it might not seem like it's fast enough, I'd be scared if it was fast enough. Let's put it that way. When it's fast enough, then it gets swayed the other way. These are long, deliberate wrestling matches instead of quick punching matches, and the results are that we end up having long-standing consequences from them, and we're winning. Technically, we're winning. So I hear you, and it's just words, but it's better than the alternative, I guess, is what I'm saying. But anyway, AR Guns out there, and then Gun Metal Guy. Thanks for showing up. I'm assuming you're at work right now. We do our show at midnight so that the people that are working overnight have something to listen to that's live, so that the people that listen to this during the day see what it's like to listen to a recording and never get the actual live thing. So what it's like when you work overnight, when you reset the planet, when you put things together, when you deliver everything, when you do all the stuff that gets taken for granted by people in the morning who think like elves come out and magically reset the world. So yeah, we do it overnight. Our goal would be to go long format, go hours and hours, talk about Second Amendment stuff for an hour or so, then get into guns. I can talk nerdy about guns. I just prioritize Second Amendment stuff first. I've already talked about guns. Go look at 5,000 something videos on YouTube. I've talked about guns for years and years and years. I don't have a problem talking about guns. Things that change are worth talking about. Things that I've already talked about a couple of times are less interesting to talk about. But in reality, some of the things I've already kind of alluded to today, we lose when we only occasionally pay attention to the things that matter. So I've chosen to pay attention to the things that matter as a priority. With a long enough show, however, I can talk about the priorities and, in addition, have some talk about guns. I don't talk about guns the way other people do because I'm not, just meeting guns for the first time. Been around guns my whole life. I've seen a lot of them. I pulled triggers on a bunch of them for lots of different ways. So when I talk about guns, I like to talk about guns in creative new ways and have some fun with it and really explore. If we were doing a long format show and I had that kind of time, we talk about Second Amendment at the beginning of the show. We talk about guns for the meat, this guts of the sandwich. But then on the flip side, on the other side of the show, when it's about to wrap up, we'd be wrapping up with welcome to the day for the people who are waking up in the morning. And we'd offer something like 3 things you need to know, some sort of a summary that we'd have come up with during the night. For people, I like to think of the people that are getting up and heading to the range, getting up and heading to a gun show, getting up and working at a gun shop so that they have something to listen to on the way to work that gets them ready for the day. Here's the important stuff in politics. Here's the important stuff on the front of what we like about guns. Here's some important history or some important events that are coming up. Like, go have a good day. That would be the perfect show. I would love to do that. So if you're interested in seeing that happen, become a Patreon. Buying us a cup of coffee once a month can make that happen. Just like lots of things. If 1,000 people bought us a cup of coffee, we'd be live every single night, 3 hours plus every night. We'd change everything because we wouldn't sit around chasing trends or worrying about fads. We'd just be talking about real stuff for people that are up in the middle of the night. Might be neat. If you want to see that happen, buy us a cup of coffee. It's pretty simple. And while you're over there at Patreon, I'm going to recommend you take a $20 bill, dedicate $5 to us and our projects over here. Because when you're supporting us on Patreon, you're actually supporting quite a few websites that offer information that are up 24/7, constantly being updated. Those websites are also part of what the $5 a month can contribute to. But take that $20, take the rest of that $15, put $3 here, put $2 here, put $10 here, put $5 here, however you want to divide it up. Go check out Patreon. It's a whole bunch of people creating interesting things. Now, I like the gun stuff, but you might like something else. And if you find something that you'd like to support, something that you find of value over on Patreon, support it. See what it's like. So put $20 on Patreon, $5 goes to us, $15 wherever you want to put it, and consider that an investment in what you appreciate, an investment on people who are creating what you value. And check that out for a few months. It might cost you $100 to do that for 5 months. Come back, let us know what you thought of that $100 investment in the internet in 2023. You're literally on Patreon. You're a venture capitalist in what you want to see created online. So I appreciate the people that allow us to spend time on what we're doing. And if you'd like to, again, make this an even longer show, go check out Patreon. All right, now we're getting into what other people did on the internet this week. We post this here on Substack. I guess I didn't even link to it, but the link's in the description there also. We posted on the description on this YouTube video. That's kind of a given, I guess. We also put it on our Patreon blog. So again, Patreon, as we consider it our blog as well. We have a newsletter for people that like to get this stuff in an email. We've been doing that for a little while. So there's a couple of newsletters over there. There's actually quite a bit more than that. They're just listed in the last 25 over there. And then a couple other places you can find us on all the different blog posting places or blog hosting places. We're on a lot of the social media platforms that are out there. And if we're going to post something on like a Minds or a Local or a Getter or one of those other platforms, it's usually this weekly wrap up, because we're really trying to get the word out on all the people we're about to start talking about now. So we started out the show saying, hey, welcome in the people that join us live at night. And then we talked about some of these bullet points. I just recently mentioned here some of the places you could find this update each week. And now we're getting into what other people have done this week that's focused on what our Second Amendment protects. There's Wesley out there. Good afternoon, good evening. All right, so not just water tonight. I've been drinking a lot too much coffee, I think, so I'm drinking just water tonight. We got the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association. Brought a bunch of people to the rally at the Capitol for Constitutional Carry. And this was, it's not a very long video, but it's a video of some of the people that are there who had something to say, and kind of gives you an idea of the scale of people that showed up for that in Nebraska. Thanks to everybody who did, and thanks to the NFOA for helping to cover that. We got Kerrie Ann and Renee. Kerrie Ann is the DC Project Massachusetts representative. Renee is the Rhode Island representative, and together they do a video program, a TV show essentially, called Sisters in Arms, a Firearm Story, and that is on episode number 6. We're happy to be trying to let people know about that. It's cool to see people in different mediums having a focus on Second Amendment and having a good time with those different platforms, those different places to post content. After all, we're trying to normalize firearms here. Having interesting people talk about interesting aspects of firearms is how we do that. Because not everybody's interested in every message. So the more diverse, more messaging we have, it's fun. Next, we get the Four Boxes Diner guy interviewing Larry Correia about this book. And there's quite a few interviews about this guy. So what do you think? This guy, I've heard of his name before, but I've never heard him doing anything before. Comes in, writes a book, 0 to hero. So what do you think? If anybody's seen this, we haven't seen any shows talking about this aspect where people who are new are interviewing people who are new, talking about subjects that have been around for a little while. It's neat. We get a lot more people involved. We get more people listening. We're going to get more people standing up and talking on their soapbox. I don't know how many people are paying attention to the number of people that are out there with soapboxes and the messages they're saying versus what's been said versus the messages that need to be said. That's the kind of conversation I'd like to be in sometime. Getting into a pretty cool, they just called it Liberal Gun Club Live, but what this actually was, it's about an hour, I think, and it's a conversation with the people who attended the booth at SHOT Show for the Liberal Gun Club. Now, this was downstairs in the kind of new product, small business room where there's just a high density of smaller booths and a lot of, how do you say that? I guess there was a vibe downstairs that's unique in that room. There's a lot of people in that room with a lot of different topics, from hunting to concealed carry to sports to manufacturing still. And that room has changed a bit over the years because they pulled out the manufacturers into different rooms, and they've pulled out the suppliers into the supplier showcase. So they've changed the elements of that room, but it's still an affordable room for people who are in the scene, in the industry. So this was a conversation about how the people who attended the booth, how they experienced the show. And some of them are veterans to the show, and some of them were attending for the first time. So this was a pretty cool conversation, and I'm hoping to have the people that were at the booth on our show too, to nerd out and talk about what it was like to represent the Liberal Gun Club at SHOT Show. This was their first time with a booth, and fairly successful, I'd say. We're just saying the Liberal Gun Club is getting better, but that's relative. Welcome. Well, I'm still trying to figure out. There's the Liberal Gun Club, and then there's Liberal Gun Owners. So LGC and LGO. And being dyslexic and not even realizing there was two of them, I've been mixing them up for quite a while, and just figuring out that there's two of them, that they're separate organizations, and yeah, it's their fault for making them basically the same name and looking exactly the same, and then not doing anything. They both have red, white, and blue logos, I think, too. So let's see. The Liberal Gun Club we'll grab it, and then if we go up here and type in Liberal Gun Owners, flip it over to images, and you can see what the Liberal Gun Club's logo is. This is the Liberal Gun Owners. So, come on, man. Right? Like, I'm supposed to figure out the difference between these two when there's a zillion other things I'm keeping track of. So, all right. Anyway, they are getting better, as you say. At least they're evolving their messaging, and they're figuring out that they don't have to lead with the liberal part. They're allowed to lead with the gun club part, for sure. Especially if they're trying to get past the differences, period. Let's leave it like that, right? Let's see. Then the next thing is a quick video from Gun Owners Radio, a radio show that broadcasts every Sunday afternoon. That is a project of the Gun Owners, San Diego Gun Owners. So that's a it's a nonprofit gun owners rights group from Southern California that's expanding into more Central California, I guess they call it. And then they had Cheryl Todd on their radio show this week to talk about our Second Amendment rally here in Arizona that's coming up next weekend, the 18th of February, our 10th annual rally. So it's just a quick, not very good audio version of Cheryl talking with the crew about that rally. It's really not that long, but it's a good reminder that the rally is coming up. Now I'm going to give a link to this Give, Send, Go, which is the new version of GoFundMe that everybody hates GoFundMe now, but everybody still likes. Give, Send, Go. I didn't do that right. So let me paste that again with spaces in between so you can actually click on the link. Now, this is a link to a Give, Send, Go, which is raising funds for this Navy guy. I got to take a drink. I'll be right back. Oh my goodness. I'm definitely getting dried out today talking. So Crump had this guy, I think his name was Adam, on to talk about this guy name is Tate, who's a Navy guy, and he was approached by someone who said they were trying to buy guns for movie props and that they needed Tate's help to acquire, I think they were GSHHs, whatever those things are, some kind of 9mm gun. So this all roots back to 9mm again, but this guy was approached. Someone needed some firearms for movie props. So the guy Tate went to Gunbroker and purchased some PPSH parts kits. So not guns, but parts kits from an FFL, and then repackaged them and sent them to the person who was looking for props for a movie thing. And then the guy Tate was arrested for selling a machine gun. So the parts kit was evidently, I think they said it was saw cut or cut with a saw instead of cut with a torch. And the difference there is that when you cut something with a saw, it leaves a fairly clean cut and it removes however much material the saw, that the saw blade was. So if the saw blade was very thick, it's going to remove a band of material. If it's a very thin saw blade, it'll remove a very thin strip of material, because a saw blade only removes the material that it physically cuts through. A torch, on the other hand, uses an oxyacetylene typically, so an oxygen-rich propane torch or acetylene torch, which will heat the metal to very hot. It'll make the metal liquid, and then they'll often blow a stream of air through that as it's hot to essentially blow the molten metal away. What you end up with is a very sloppy cut that looks like if you melt plastic and it gets all bubbly and wrinkly. That's what happens to the metal. It gets very misshapen and distorted, and it messes with the heat treating of the steel as you cut it. The saw cut will do that also, but in a very narrow band near the cut. With a torch cut, that's a very sloppy heat treating, so it effectively really ruins the metal in a much more obvious way than the cutting could ever do. Whatever reason, the ATF doesn't make it real clear, or hadn't made it real clear throughout the years, that was the way they expected demilitarization to happen, for receivers to be cut or for barrels to be destroyed. So because this guy bought a parts kit that was saw cut instead of torch cut and then sold it, the ATF got him. So I think the concept or the potential is that they set this kid up to be caught, or they were out looking for people who aren't going to be violent, who aren't actually causing any crime, who are simply responding to, what do they call that when they set up an entrapment? Investigators. So if investigators go out intent to find someone or make someone a criminal, and they go out and they ask people to commit crimes all over the place, and then set up a honeypot to buy the slightly illegal product, but to make it look like it's good to go, is that the way they should be creating and solving crimes? Or should they be actually going after people who are, I don't know, cartel members who might be dragging guns from Russia around the country that shouldn't even, be in the country legally? But there's probably no way that the cartels are bringing guns along with the fentanyl precursors and the fentanyl into the country. That's probably crazy. So this was a give and go. If you're interested in, again, accumulating a bunch of funds for the defense, for the legal defense for this Navy guy, it was a pretty interesting conversation on Crump Show. Adam is his best friend from the Navy, so that's their affiliation. He's trying to help a friend of his who's right now in a pod with a bunch of different criminals, kids, and mostly kids that are gang members or, in the drugs or whatever, who are all sitting in some kind of a pod with nothing to do and no activities. So they're just sort of sitting around looking at each other, he said, essentially. And he's been there for a while, and he's got no potential to get out anytime soon. They're looking to get better legal representation or more competent legal representation to get them out of this situation. And again, $5, $20, depending on what you've got available. If you're interested and able, 1,000 people with $5 gives them $5,000 towards this. 10,000 people with $10,000 gives them $100,000. So again, if you're interested, the Give, Send, Go is a neat project or a neat platform, because it does let you see the goal and where they're at incrementally towards that goal. If you want to get the word out, I'm sure that in the way the internet works, that is just as, if not, more powerful sometimes than even a $20 or a $5 contribution. I think I'm using the honeypot the right way, right? When they put out something attractive as a lure and then arrest everybody who comes up and sniffs it. What is the ATF? Go find real bad guys. Come on. Exactly. And that's one of those acts of desperation of bureaucracy when they know they need numbers to justify their existence, or numbers to distract from the inaction in other realms, or they need something to prove that they've done something besides just negative projects with their funding. Then yeah, they're going to create easy numbers, and they'll go after people who are ordinarily law-abiding, slightly change the rules, and then nab them for skirting the rules. It's abuse of bureaucracy. It's abuse of the system. But again, it's frustrating, and we have a system, and we have capitalism, and we've got the ability to have shows like this to help get the word out. I'm hoping that the folks that watch a show like this in the middle of the night on a Friday aren't just observing. You don't have to do nothing right this second, but remember that you are the lobby. You are the gun owners in 2023. What we do as individuals adds up and has consequence. So, I'm sending this out. Hopefully people are taking some of these links and passing them around. If you've got social platforms, you're scheduling a post or posting in a few days with some of the interesting things that other people have done. That's how we create awareness, and that's how we become active. And then that activism is just the consequence of being active more than once. Okay, next, getting into the guy who is a part of the Nebraska Firearms Owners Association that we talked about up here. Sandhill Shooter hosts a conversation each Thursday. So he had a chat about everyday carry. I'm going to put a poll up here so that we haven't done a poll in a while. This will be on I guess I have to put it on the big channel. So nobody's super chatting. You don't have to, but I can't super chat on the big channel anymore. I'm putting the poll on the big channel, but if you want to super chat, you got to go to the other channel, the Daily Gun Show channel. But if you want to answer the poll, what is EDC? Okay, so EDC equals knives, wallet, keys, etc. Right? Which is what EDC has always been. Nobody can deny that. That's what it's always been. So EDC equals EDC plus CCW, which is your gun. Right? Which one is it? I'm just going to leave it like that. So everybody nowadays, because it's cool and hip and trendy to not care definitions of words or whatever, they do this because they think they're funny. These kids think they're funny. Well, what happens is people that don't know come along and they start calling everything CCW. So we'll see what people think out there in the audience. But they were talking about EDC. But I think they were actually talking real EDC last night. They were talking about watches and knives and wallets and keys and pocket knives. I already say that. Lights are a big thing. Sometimes first aid kits. Some people carry other things. All right. Woods is agreeing that EDC is everything except the gun. If anybody else is out there, feel free to participate in, leave a comment or whatever. So Russ had a Winchester 1897 on for this old gun over on the Cape Gunworks channel. They featured old guns that come into the shop, and Russ does a quick rundown of why they're so cool, and often takes them out to the range and shoots them. Big fan of the 1897, probably my favorite shotgun of all the shotguns. I don't really like that many shotguns though. Then we get 2A Cops. So this is a channel that is two former cops from California who moved to, well, I think they're Idaho, but I'm not sure. But they moved out of California and they started this channel. There's a couple of ways you can tell when somebody started a channel. One is to go to their About page and see that they joined in October of 2019, okay? But you can also just go back and see that their first video was from, see how it'll say 1,000 views 3 years ago? You click on that 3 years ago and it switches to the date. So you got October of 2019, right? October of 2019, and then a couple of videos in, they're in February of 20. So they're posting videos like monthly, right? They're not posting them all that frequently. And then you can see there's just not that many videos over that many years. So that being said, 12,000 subscribers, typically their videos get somewhere between 1,000 and 120,000 views. So that's how, it's a gauge, an indicator of how interested people are in the point of view of police officers who offer perspective from their experience. So I thought that was pretty neat. 12,000 subs, 120,000 views in 2 days. That's how interested people are and the impact you can have. So don't let anybody tell you how to determine your reach or your usefulness or your voice. Lots of value out there and people are adding to the conversation and whatnot. So anyway, that's an interesting video on one of it's two cops that run that show, two ex-cops. This is, and they haven't had a video in like a month or two. So this is, they don't do constant content, but this is a good perspective or interesting perspective from ex-law enforcement who still is, I guess his occupation is to train law enforcement. So he says that he has lots of conversations with current police and people, law enforcement that he talks to in his training role, and offers insight that they basically, the spoiler alert is that he says that none of the police he knows are in favor of this, would enforce it if they could or had to, and they are not registering their pistols, that instead they're waiting until the last possible moment, if at all, because they're sure that it's going to be overturned or some kind of a stay is going to be imposed on the enforcement of it. All right, so moving on to Ghost, had the people from Hyperion, or one of the guys from Hyperion. He is from our Antares Alliance, and it was an interesting conversation to hear sort of the what's happening with Antares, and then what's specifically going on with Hyperion. They're an ammunition company. They also talked about some of the other companies that were associated with the Antares Alliance. For people that aren't familiar, for a number of years, Antares Alliance was a group or an organization of veteran-owned companies that would get together and have events. One of those events was the weekend before SHOT Show. They would go to the Pro Gun Vegas range, which is kind of between Las Vegas and where the media day at the range occurs. And then they would, the day before the media day, the day before the range day at SHOT Show, so on Sunday, Antares would have their own shoot and invite a bunch of different companies that were owned and operated by veterans. And that was their common thing. Otherwise, a bunch of different diverse companies would show up and have a range day. It was a pretty interesting event, and that happened for a number of years. And in Ghost Conversation, they talk a bit about the end of that. Roy is saying, if you carry a gun every day, then it's everyday carry. I get I hear where that part of it comes from, but like I say, for years and years, everyday carry is your knives and your keys and the stuff that everybody carries. And then CCW came along And now everybody can see CW, and they just assume that everybody could always see CW, I guess. So maybe EDC in 2023 is with a gun. We'll find out, because you're going to make that decision in the poll here in a bit. We'll go back and look at the poll results after a bit. So next up is Chris from the 740. Awesome dude from Ohio who was out at the Great American Outdoor Show with a bunch of people. Had them get together and they had a conversation. I missed this one. I can't remember. Was I sleeping or was I sick? I can't remember. Something happened and I missed this one. But I'll probably go back and watch that one because I'm curious about that show. I've never been able to attend. And now after a bunch of people have been to SHOT Show and stuff and had already been to some other events, Wannamakers or whatnot, getting perspective from people who are getting in the game about these shows is always cool. Chief Fires has one of the switch guns from Standard Manufacturing. Pretty neat. It's cool to watch someone who's new to the small revolvers and new to doing reviews and stuff doing our thing. Pretty cool. Then we have KD with Stogies and Straps, a project he does where he interviews people and they smoke a cigar, and it's, I guess, gun people mostly. That's where the straps comes from. But the concept is to just have a long format conversation with people about different topics that matter, and to have this kind of thing going on where they sit around these leather couches and smoke cigars during it. Well, this is the dude from Carolina Custom Foam, and he did a pretty honest and raw explanation of what it's like to be in crisis. And we hear about suicide prevention, mental health awareness, and that can be pretty clinical. It can just be words when you're going through something, when you're at a time of crisis and dealing with the actual realities of poor decision making and things being blown out of reality and blown out of scale. It's difficult to have perspective on that when we're having these conversations, just conversations. So this was an effort by these guys to address some of the real scenarios, the real situation. And it's a very raw, very powerful conversation. It's not something I would recommend just listening to lightly. I would say it's probably worth grabbing a cup of coffee or something to drink and actually listen into this conversation. Or maybe while you're cutting the lawn or something, or doing something, some kind of task, it might be worth listening to also, as understanding that you're going to hear some interesting stuff, like some deep stuff. And I'll be curious to see what people think about that. We don't get enough of that. Thanks to KD for leading the way yet again and having real discussions. And thanks to Peter Wakeham from Carolina Custom Foam for being willing to bring it all out, which isn't comfortable, easy, or common. This is not something I've seen anybody do before. So this was, I don't know if it's something new or if it's the beginning of something that's going to be happening on the regular, or if it was able to be useful as a one-time thing. Time will tell, but thanks again to both of these guys for doing this, and always impressed by Stogies and Straps. It is a great conversation, being able to talk to people with, from KD's line of questioning or perspective, and then he gives them plenty of time to just expand on how he kind of set them up for the conversation. So worth checking out. This is episode 6. They don't come out very regularly, but they're all really good. All right, next up is open source defense. So this is over on Spread, what's it called? Something Stack. What we're looking at here, Spread Stack? No, Substack. So open source defense is one of the other channels I'd look at over on Substack. Substack is the blog thing that we're looking at this whole thing on tonight. And so when you link to it, that's what it looks like. there's a couple of different conversations they had over there. This third place one is from last week, and I might have discussed this, but it's worth discussing again. So they consider, I don't know if this, some of this stuff is like Reddit stuff, some of this stuff is bigger than that, but I don't know where this third place came from, but essentially I think the deal is you got your house, that's your first place, you got your place of work or school, the other thing that you do all the time, that's your second place. And then your third place is the one that you typically get to choose. And it's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. And back in the day, it might have been your local bar. It might have been like the bowling alley. It might have been the baseball field. You know, it might have been some place that you hung out all the time. And the concept of this article is the internet, the third place, question mark. You know, is the internet what we now use as the place where we go when we have the chance to go and spend time? And I'll leave it at that. If you want to go check it out, feel free. But if you like that concept, expand on it. Think about creating content, think about asking questions, and think about your habits and what you're doing with them. I think there's a lot of people that would say, whatever, like get real life, go do something outside. Well, if you're like me, your neighbors are a bunch of people who are nice enough and everything, but they like different things in life than I like. So I enjoy the fact of being able to go online and find people that are like-minded, that have the same level of interest or commitment or value at the same level, things that I value. So being able to find that, it definitely makes the online third place to me more valuable than the whatever opportunities might be available in a place you have the opportunity to exist. Now, if you have the opportunity to move to a place where you're going to enjoy your neighbors because you picked them, that's awesome. But not all of us get to pick our neighbors. Then we get to this foul is coming from inside the house. So let's talk about this one too. Last week, University of Wyoming announced it's launching a Center for Studying Guns and Gun Ownership. So I think I mentioned that, and I haven't had a chance to decide what I feel about that or not yet. But I'm a big fan of the University of Wyoming for my reasons, and it's interesting. I've definitely hung out there before. And then, so it talks about the Firearms Research Center, essentially just mentioning it, that they've officially launched and that they're still waiting for it to happen. Then it talks about Professor David Yamane and his work as with guns in the culture. So he says, in a world where studying guns is synonymous with studying what's wrong with guns, it's unusual that a center in Wyoming launches to research guns that aren't used in murder, which is something like 99.9999% of the guns that are out there. He relates it to it be like a famous surgeon. Well, I've actually never seen an intact femur. Not sure how they work. My grandfather grew up on a farm and had intact femurs all the time. I know that working femurs are cherished tradition for many people, but here we really only know what broken ones look like. And that sounds kind of odd, but that I thought that was an interesting perspective, that the so-called knowledgeable brainiacs who would use all their brain nerd efforts to tell us how the world would be better without guns and stuff don't ever pay attention to the positive side of guns. They only look at the broken. Again, that'd be like that doctor who's never even seen anything except broken limbs telling you what it's like. It must be nice to have limbs that aren't broken, but here we talk about broken limbs. Okay, so anyway, I don't know, I'll let you read that if you want, but he goes into how we got to this and goes through kind of does a thought discussion on why we might be at a point where we are today. I recommend Open Source Defense. It's interesting. Lots of opinions and perspectives that aren't driven by news of the day, but are often adjacent to news of the day, or news of last week, or maybe even news of what's going to happen next week. Let's take a look at this. This is Clover Tax podcast season for next year, or this year. So starting this February, or starting next week, it looks like, and then going through March, April, and then into May. He's got 22 podcasts, I think, figured out here. So he's going to have Outstandards. I have no idea what that is. Walk the Talk America. We know what that is. Patriot Firearm School. No idea what that is. Meet the Pressers. We know who that is. Infinite Defense. No idea. U.S. Clay Target League. That sounds interesting. Hootie Hoo. No idea who that is. Bursa. We know who that is. A Great Start Shooting School. Brooke Cheney from A Great Start Shooting School. We know who that is. She has an effort each Saturday for suicide prevention and mental health awareness. And then we got Riding Shotgun with Charlie. We know who that is. 2A for E. We know who that is. Women Who Carry. That I don't know who that is. The Honest Truth. Don't know who that is. Cape Gun Works. We know who that is. Texas Gun Owners Association. I've heard of them. I don't know who that is, though. BRG USA. I think that's a gun. Right to Bear. That's some kind of personal protection liability coverage. And then Gabby. All right, We Like Shooting. We know who that is. Gabby Franco. We know who she is. Anderson Manufacturing. Another gun one. And then Gear Report. And then the last one is European American Armory. So it's a pretty interesting mix. I thought I'd mention it because Clover's being pretty ambitious with his interview approach to the podcast this year. He's putting a lot of time into getting everybody figured out and getting it all figured out, or getting it all set up. Let's see. Then we've got North American Arms posting, kind of bragging. I guess Gunbroker announced the top-selling products last year. And North American Arms is all excited because North American Arms is all excited because the NAA revolver is number 5 on the list of the top 10. So a lot of North American Arms revolvers sold on Gunbroker last year. Let's see. The NSSF did the SHOT Show news, I think, SHOT Show project, where they had a media thing going in the middle of the show, and they had different people on. And NSSF has now been essentially dropping a lot of these brief interviews, these quick interviews that they did at the show. And this is one with Philip Smith from the National African American Gun Owners Association. And they were chatting about the first annual national convention that'll happen July 28th and 30th this year. So it's a long time coming. With all the bullshit of the last couple of years, they kept putting it off and are having it finally this year. And this is NAGA reposting the SHOT Show news conversation. So it says NAGA National Convention will be hosted at the Georgia International Convention Center. The convention will host live music, dancing, giveaways, lots of opportunities to network. Events will include the President's Gala, a black tie event on Friday evening, a family night at the aquarium on Saturday evening, and then bullets and barbecues on Sunday afternoon. The VIP ticket includes all of these and private events as well. So that's pretty cool. Seems like they're learning from the SHOT Show and the NRA show and incorporating the best elements of some of those. I listen to 3 or 4 radio shows each week. I guess 3 radio shows each week. No, 4 radio shows each week. The Come and Talk It radio show is Michael Cargill, the dude on the right in this picture. That he owns a gun shop, Central Texas Gun Works, and Yoder, Texas, one of our friends from Texas, has been posting the Come and Talk It radio show online since, 2015 or 16 or something. So we've been listening to the Come and Talk It show on Sundays for a long, long time. It's a Second Amendment focused gun radio show. It's broadcast live on Sunday afternoons, and now for I don't know how long, years, they've been streaming the broadcast on Sundays on YouTube, and they, to some extent, they pay attention to the comments. They rarely incorporate the comments into the show. They have once or twice, but typically they'll read the comments and they'll interact with the comments, but they're hosting the show, and the show is happening. So that's one of them. We'll talk about some of the others, but this week they talked about the brace ban, the ATF's pistol brace ban, and it's a pretty good show. It's almost always a good show. This is a pretty good one. There's also, I guess I don't have them linked in here, but there's also Gun Owners Radio. We mentioned that one earlier. They do a show on Sunday afternoons as well. It broadcasts live, and they stream while they're broadcasting. That one's out of California, and they'll also read the comments, but the people who read in the comments are not the same people doing the radio show, so nothing really gets taken from the comments to the show. They are capable of reading the comments. They just don't do it as a regular basis. I bring that up because the third show that happens on Sunday is called Eye on the Target Radio, and that's Amanda Suffolk and her brother, Rob, and they co-host a firearms-focused radio show with a eye on the Second Amendment. That's the only syndicated firearms-focused radio show hosted by a female. That one goes live each Sunday on YouTube. Well, it goes live, broadcast live each Sunday to the radio, and they stream the broadcast on the recording or the broadcasting of it on YouTube. Now, they will incorporate the conversation that's happening on the YouTube comments into the show. So that one's probably the most fun, the most interactive to listen to. They have Flight Society Podcast does the producing for that. So they're competent, and they're able to keep up with the comments and stuff. So that's a fun one to listen to. The fourth show that I listen to is Cape Gunworks. They have a show called Rapid Fire Radio that gets recorded every Wednesday. The show goes out on the weekend, but they record it on Wednesday. And when they record, they certainly pay attention to the comments. That's the most interactive radio show that's out there. I was a guest on the show last week, so this week, I guess I should say. I don't know if I even put it in here. But those are the 4 radio shows we listen to each week. Now, in addition, there's a couple of other things I listen to on the regular. One is The Reload. I forgot to link that this week. But The Reload is a podcast that happens for about an hour every Sunday that's recorded. And then throughout the week, they'll post segments of the show as separate videos. And it's typically an hour-long podcast where they interview somebody, some mover and shaker in the Second Amendment community, ask questions, and get their insight on some topic of the day, usually whatever's happening in the news they react to. And then they take this end portion of the show, which is usually the small portion of the show, and react to other news and projects that they might be working on, or just kind of react with their or interact with their membership. So that's called The Reload. But some of the other things I listen to on the regular, things that come out pretty much weekly, sometimes now more than weekly, are some of the military interview shows that are happening. The one we're going to talk about here is Mike Ritland with Warrior Dog. And this one is an interview with a ranger who's a canine handler with some of the famous canines, working dogs that have been in the news or in movies recently. So Leica is a girl dog who's got 3 legs and 1 robot leg. And she was all blown up in her, well, obviously her last operation, not obviously, but in her last operation, she got all blown up and saved people. And she is Julian's current dog at home. But the dog he had before Leica was Benno. And that's a pretty famous dog. And there's a movie recently that's out technically about both of the dogs, but it's about her story. But the movie ends up being about both dogs. Really interesting. If you have emotion or soul or whatever, there's a lot in that one. It's a 4.5-hour conversation, 2 dog handlers talking dogs. pretty interesting. Super, super cool interview. And we've got some new patches we're going to be grabbing from that interview. So each week I also listen to Team House, definitely worth listening to. That's a Ranger and a Green Beret that interview people, long format interviews live every Friday, and then they record interviews that go up on Tuesdays recently. Then lastly, Combat Story is a Apache helicopter pilot that then went to the CIA, and he interviews people about their combat experiences. Each of these three interviewers interview shows brings insight from the global war on terror and past places that we've fought or just done work, and they illuminate a lot of the interesting aspects that have always been too top secret to talk about, and then just the bureaucracy and the way that the military exists, which a lot of people think has a brain or has like an intention, and in reality it's a bunch of cause and effects. So a lot of interesting insight in these interviews. Let's see, we get into what is this, S3 or whatever they're called, S2. So this is I haven't watched this one yet, but I put it up here as something I'd like to watch when I get some time to do it. If I end up working on some projects after this tonight, I might be listening to this. So let me know. We're going to go check the poll here in a bit. We'll see how many people. It says there's a bunch of people listening, but I don't see that many people commenting. So if anybody's interested in going live after this tonight, let me know. The way it worked out, I took a nap actually before this, so I might work on a project after this still. And if that's the case, I'm listening to a Jocko podcast over here. How old is this? This one just got auto played, so I didn't. This is 7 years old, so I don't give a shit about listening to this. I might listen to this Warlords Radio about shortwave. I think it's like 20 minutes long. All right, anyway, getting into some other things. Arizona, where I live, has tortoises, a thing called the desert tortoise. It's a turtle. They live out in the desert. They live for hundreds of years, and they get pretty big. Well, they're not, I don't think they're endangered, but they're certainly not supposed to mess with them. And you don't find them out in the desert. I mean, it's not like they're out there, but people don't find them. People that live out in the desert probably find them because they come around, but I've never, in all my years, never found one just out in the desert. However, people raise them. People get them. They either grab them and keep them, or some people raise them, breed them. And what you end up with is people put them in their backyards. They think it's cool to have a tortoise in their backyard. And they'll live out there because they can live off of lettuce and nothing. So you can put them in your backyard and they think it's cool and they eat some grass or whatever. And for the most part, that's messed up because now we end up with tons of tortoises. People abandon them. People give them up to the game and fish, and the game and fish can't hold them. So essentially, they need homes for lots and lots of tortoises. The tortoises hibernate, so to speak, over the winter. They don't do much. So it's not too hard to have a bunch of tortoises during the winter. But when they all start to wake up and want to hang out and do stuff, they don't like each other. They get into fights and stuff. So you can't have too many of them together. They get sick when they're all too many of them together. So they're looking for homes. I don't know. I just put it out there. It's one of the things that's happening in Arizona, an effect of a bunch of population in a place that isn't used to having a lot of population. I'm sure there's other issues with other kind of critters all around the country, but this is the one of the things that we deal with in Arizona. Speaking of little critters, this little dude who's been sleeping the whole show is feeling better. Thanks to everybody who was paying attention to his progress getting the kennel cough, or maybe it was just sadness from not being able to go SHOT Show. I don't know. I'm assuming it was kennel cough. He might have just been super sad, and it got him sick from being so sad. But either way, we went online. I don't remember what day this was. At some point, I stole some time away and went online and tried to play with Blender a little bit. Ended up making a little Blender version of the puppy and then printed that out. I think we have a couple of different versions of it. I've got one that's going to DJ. So if you're interested in getting a little Blender puppy model, let me know. We can send you a file or whatever if you got a printer. Like I say, I might. Well, now I'm yawning, but I was thinking I might steal maybe another hour here and go live, or maybe not go live, but steal another hour here and play with some of the software. That's the only way I learn it, is by opening it up and playing with it once in a while. All right, that's the week. That's the show. And that's the blog over here. Check it out over on Substack. There are some other things on Substack that are worth checking out. And there's probably all kinds of other things on Substack that are worth checking out. I know a lot of people use it as their blog. I use it as this so that I can show our blog each week a lot easier on the video than if we just went to the description of this video. It's the same data, but it looks also boring. See how boring that is? Super boring. All right, we're checking out the poll. Looks like we got a few votes, and nowadays in 2023, like it or not, people are calling EDC, all your EDC stuff plus your gun. It's sad. It's sad that so many people are wrong, but that's how it is. That's the way it is now. So I'm not going to do it, but other people are going to go around saying EDC is your stuff and your gun when it's really just your stuff. But I guess that's a good sign. It means that the country is so comfortable with CCW at this point that they don't even know what it's like back in the days when we couldn't just assume your EDC meant your gun also. All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm assuming everybody's leaving because all the numbers are going down here, but we'll end this one. If you're got any questions, or if you're listening in the future and you want to mention something, leave a comment. We read those comments on whatever the platform is you're watching this on. We recommend theguntube.org. Our friend Mike built that thing a number of years ago, and it's of the alternative platforms for hosting video for guns. It's the coolest, it's the most real, and it still exists. You've also got things like UGE Tube, Utah Gun Exchange Tube. I've been posting stuff over there. Don't get a lot of feedback, but we do get views over there. And then we've been posting things on like Locals and Minds and Rumble. So give us some feedback if you're listening on one of those platforms. You probably don't get as many shout outs from people over here on YouTube who do their stuff and just drop it on those other platforms. We're putting it on those other platforms to explore, to see if it's worth having conversations out there, or if the only conversation is happening over here on YouTube. I want to see his little puppy tail flutter. I don't know if that got on video or not, but I don't know what happened. He just had a freak out and he wagged his tail a bunch of times. He almost never wagged his tail. All right, so with that, we'll wrap this thing up. Harry Geyser saying thanks. Art Geyser. Thanks to everybody who purchased stuff over at the store, which is one person today. He got a whole bunch of free stuff because nobody else ordered anything today. We've got the robot project going. I guess I should probably talk about that before we end. Over on Indiegogo, we do have a project going to, let me push this back up on the screen, put the puppy down here. Wow, that took forever to open. We've got a robot project happening over on Indiegogo. We are attempting to buy the sewing machine, the embroidery machine from Owl and Anchor before they sell it to their neighbor. So if you're interested in seeing what the world would be like if we had a sewing machine robot that would allow us to make hats and patches and other things, then consider going over to our Indiegogo project. This is our 37th Indiegogo project. It looks like we're about to hit $80,000 in funding over the years. This project is $7,000, so we need 140 people to come on board and help us to help Alan Anchor to give us their old robot. We're going to go to California, see how it works, watch them work it in front of us. Then we're going to take that thing apart, cram it into the van, hork it back over here to Arizona, and then put it back together and start sewing stuff on it. And if you'd like to be some of the first people to get the coolest stuff out of that thing as we get it moving, then jump on the project. There's a couple of other surprises that'll happen that'll be posting as I have a chance to post that kind of stuff. So stay tuned to this show, stay tuned to the channels, and I guess you could stay tuned over at Indiegogo to how the project goes. We've already unlocked a patch over there, so we'll be making run of patches to go along with this project. We would also encourage you to share the project. So if it's something that you're already participating in, or you're not able to participate, or you're just unwilling, you're not interested, it's not something you're that big a fan of, but you're still interested in helping us out with getting the word out about it, please do share it. There's a little link over here you can click on that gives you a nice short little link. That's the one I use to show people the project. It's the one I just posted in the description here. It makes it short and sweet, but you never know when somebody might be out there interested in embroidery. They might be interested in patches. They might be interested in seeing what somebody like me would do with a robot like this, and they might participate. In fact, if you share it and 2 people participate, it's almost like you're a superhero because you're bringing in tons and tons of interest into a project. So thanks again for everybody who's joining us for that or participating in that. And the people that grab stuff over at the store. Every weekend is Free Patch Friday. I've got so many free patches, it ain't even funny. So if whenever you buy stuff over at the store, especially on Friday, but if whenever you buy stuff at the store, we send out free stuff. Oh, She Fires is out there. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Just about to wrap it up, though. So thanks, everybody, again. We'll put a commercial here for the store, and we'll be back tomorrow with Ask Gun Questions with Tony Simon and Clover Tack.
AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions.